and inclusion mean to you?
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Grizel. Inclusion for me has, as Dr. Patterson has said, it gives you the sense of that somebody has to invite you to the table. And in my experience in the energy industry and so on, and this is my 25th year in oil and gas, I've never been invited to the table. I've always had to push and make my way to find a seat at the table. So from that perspective, I've always ensured and pushed my way to be included in a conversation, in a meeting, at the table, or at a management team. However, as this has grown over the years and it's now become a theme, as opposed to something that we fight for, inclusion is important in terms of me ensuring that we don't push inclusion by ensuring somebody else's exclusion.
Right.
So in this case, women want to be included at the table, and then on the other side, the men feel that that is going to happen because they are now being excluded. And my, platform on this says, well, no, there are 10 seats. If there are 7 and 3 women, let's make it 14 seats. We don't push to come in to take somebody else's seat. We push to make the table wider so that inclusion widens the ability for more people to be included and is not a sacrifice of somebody else being excluded, whether it's men, whether it's another minority group, or anybody else. So we need to push to widen the table in order for the inclusion to work right. I've just been very fortunate to return from the United Nations Global Compact CFO Roundtable last week, and they have started a foundation discussion around pushing past inspiring inclusion to the point where you can inspire inclusion, but then what happens after that? We have to invest in inclusion now, because we can talk about inspiring, but how are we now executing on that? And executing on it means we have to put money behind it, we have to put budgets behind it, and that's where the discussions are going now in terms of how do we progress that. I was fortunate to speak with one of the CFO for Bank of America, and she said in her capacity, she's been able to command a budget of $132 million solely and wholly for Bank of America to push gender equity, to push the gender platform in the bank. I mean, those numbers are massive to us, and not only as a country, as a region, but if that's where the direction is heading, those are the kinds of things that we need to look to do to execute on this now and move beyond inspiring inclusion, but investing in inclusion.
Thank you. And Jared, inclusion. Where's the workplace, and what steps and measures you took to overcome that?
There have been quite a few, Grizel, not to harp on any of them, but I think as women in the working world, we've all experienced a time when we've volunteered ideas, we've put forward suggestions, recommendations, and a male counterpart may have usurped it and taken it as their own, and you find yourself standing there waiting for the credit and somebody takes it. And those were early days. Now you tend to be able to find your voice more. Imposter syndrome also forms part of that, because you feel that you may not have enough experience, you may not be ready, even though an opportunity might be presented to you. And yesterday I was at another energy company where the VP said to me, she said, I saw this video where imposter syndrome actually is something that was created as a label, and she actually does not support it, because all it does is give a label to to women's lack of self-confidence. And it's something that she is striving to remove from her language, because it's a label that was put on a thing that we are striving to overcome. So what we want to do is ensure that we build our self-confidence to get around those situations when we might feel excluded. And then there's a way to not push forward, but to ensure that your voice is heard. And your voice is heard better when you are confident in speaking, when you're confident about bringing your ideas, your recommendations, your proposals across, whether or not it wants to be heard, but your voice needs to be strong. And those are ways that you kind of battle the potential exclusions. As I had said before, also the fact that you don't have yourself included at the expense of someone else's inclusion.
Yes.
And then, of course, when you are included, you ensure that that representation is there. Other women look up, women and young girls look up and recognize when they see somebody in a role that they can now aspire to. So representation is very important in terms of inclusion, because what it demonstrates to younger girls and women coming up is, I can do that, I can be there, I can do that too. And by visibly seeing mentors, sponsors, women in positions of leadership, of authority, especially in worlds that are typically male-dominated, like the energy field, the technical sectors, and so on, it causes them now to say, oh, I didn't know I could do that, right? And a simple thing like seeing more women, that is what representation does for women and young girls, and it fights that battle of exclusion that we have been experiencing.
See from leadership to believe an inclusive culture is a high priority in the organization.
So you need
Cultural competence and inclusive leadership.
So Grizel, the short answer would definitely be yes. However, I would want to ask, is some of this working? Because the introduction of it, yes, was a fantastic idea. We do need to ensure sensitization around, embracing diversity, embracing all minorities, embracing all the different groups and so on that we have working with us and wanting to be a part of the professional working world. However, to a certain extent, some of it has become a check-the-box exercise. So I've done the unconscious bias training, I've done the sensitivity training, I've done this, I've done that. Okay, has it really moved the needle?
That's right.
How do people feel? Have we really made an impact? And again, from my recent participation at the United Nations, that was last week something that actually was put on the table, and I'm so glad because it fed straight into this panel this morning, because you want to ensure that you make an impact. And the discussion circled around training sponsors. So Jared mentioned sponsors, and as opposed to just having mentors, which I have had really good mentors coming through, which has enabled me to achieve what I have done, male mentors as well as female mentors, because in the energy sector, you tend to get more of the males, and I've had fairly good male mentors as well. Training sponsors is a completely different aspect of ensuring that we advocate and promote for younger women and girls and other minority groups coming through. Because what a sponsor does now is, as they say, mention your name in a room full of people when you're not there. So a sponsor will guide you. A sponsor will give you advice. That person will go to bat for you, plan a path for you and say, where do you want to go? Have that conversation with you to try and pull out, what plans you want for yourself, help you, as Karen said this morning, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I fell into this, and then it became something that I embraced wholeheartedly.
Right.
So the kind of conversations along, where do you really want to go? You don't know, well, try this.
Yeah.
We have this here, you seem to like this, you might gravitate towards this, so you may not know about this, but here's an opportunity. There's a project coming up 6 months from now with this client. Are you interested? I can, put your name around the table for consideration if you'd like to participate in it and see if you like it. Do you want to do a career change midlife? You're happy with the company, but you're kind of, stuck in the same department for the same 10 years. Is there somewhere else in the company that you'd like to try out and grow?
Yeah.
You're not sure, but let me give you a chance. I'll speak to somebody to give you the opportunity over here to see if you might like it, and then you might grow there as well, and it broadens your exposure, your participation, your ability to understand, different aspects of the company. A sponsor will also guide in terms of if you need that support for mental health and wellness. I may not be the person who might be the sounding board, I can be, but I can also ensure that you get, professional persons to help and guide in those moments when you feel overwhelmed. Somebody to ensure that you know how to handle the overwhelming moments, to handle the stress, to try and figure out the work-life balance in the way that it's going to be specific to each person, right? We twins, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's a whole, we can't have that discussion because that's a whole different level that has to be, understood and accommodated. So I think training definitely, but it has to be training that makes an impact and not something that's just done to tick the box and say we've achieved the budget for training. We also have to measure it to make sure that we are achieving the impact and that we see some growth, we see a gap closing, we get better responses from persons, and then to listen to the feedback that comes out of the training sessions, out of the group sessions, out of the employee group resource groups and that sort of a thing, because at the end of the day, you can bring all these people together and they can have their say, but if nobody's listening and implementing, and you don't have to get everything implemented, but at least if they see the needle moving and some recommendations are taken and put into place, people feel a part of it. They feel that they're on the journey, their ideas are being listened to, embraced, and they feel a part of it. It increases the ownership participation from the employee group as well. Thank you. I thought you were only clapping for Jared, so thanks very much for that. Well,
Yes.
again, jumping off of the allyship amongst our male counterparts, and congratulations to Jared. I'm normally in that hot seat where I'm the only woman on a panel of men when we do these discussions in the energy sector and so on. So you're in the hot seat today. I think that, as I indicated, even though there were challenges, I also had good male role models, that advocated and helped and guided. But we need to include the gentlemen along the way. We can't ensure inclusion for ourselves by excluding anybody else. We need to widen the seats at the table because the men want to help. There are a lot of good male allies out there, a lot of good heads of companies that want to do the right thing, but we need them. We need to be able to tell them what we need. And we're very good at, voicing our issues and our challenges and so on. But we need to include the gentlemen along for the ride so that they understand what challenges we face and what are the recommendations of how we want to fix these things.
Yeah.
Because they're willing to do it, but they don't want to step out there and do something and then we come and we say, well, they didn't do it right. Let's include them along the way for the discussion so that they understand where we're coming from, understand what our experiences are, how we face different challenges. Simple examples, we set meetings for 7 a.m. in the morning, right? Guess what? That's drop-off time.
Yes.
We set meetings at 3:30 that go until 5:30, 6:30. That's pick-up time. That's time to drop to lessons. And because, unfortunately, women tend to be the ones that do a lot of the dropping and picking up, we get caught there. We either have to, sacrifice the family life or sacrifice missing the meeting, and then you miss what's happening at the table, and then you get set back there. We need to ensure that we have less discussions around tokenism, because I don't want to know or feel that I'm there because I have to make up a 50% quota, and that's why you're here. No, I'm here because I was the best candidate, I was the best in the interview, and not because somebody had to find a place for me to make up a quota. We also have to put money behind it and invest in it. So when you're starting up a DEI discussion in a new organization, and I think many of our companies in Trinidad and Tobago have already progressed along that sphere, we want to make sure that we start up with everybody and not exclude anybody. We need to make sure we put budgets behind it, and we need to also ensure that we take the discussion about tokenism out of it.
Right.
And my final takeaway really would be that we ensure that we are executing on it in a way that we measure it, because it's not just a thing that's going to be there today and gone tomorrow. So there are a lot of very, very qualified people, young women and girls coming up, and we have to ensure that sponsors are available to guide them to where they want to go, to guide them to where they can be. And that's what I would guide organizations now coming to this space.
Thank you. So to those of you who voted for that question, I hope you got some good insight from her response. So that wraps up our panel discussion. So as we conclude on the participation, have a great lunch, everyone, and thank you.